Hello, everybody. Welcome to Astropath's latest and greatest video. Today, we're going to talk about the Virgo New Moon. But before we get into that, I just want to make sure that everybody knows that Astropath is a combination of Laurie Farrington of Astrolore and of myself, Jenny Date, at Hidden Path Astrology. You can find both of us on our websites, astrolaw.org. Maybe changes to that at some point. And I'm hiddenpathastrology.com. So before we get even further, Laurie, is there anything you want to promote about your business that's going on right now?
Well, for this new moon, there will be a new moon workbook on Etsy. There'll be a link below. And so you can get that. Those are really fun, just to track the cycle with your own chart. So on Etsy, I do have those. And I also have a workbook for each new season. So there will be one coming up for the upcoming Libra season. So you can look for that. There'll be a book by me coming out eventually, but that's going to be ways down the road. But yeah, there'll be a lot of changes with Astrolore and with my work over the coming year or so. So keep an eye out. That
sounds great. Yeah, perfect season to get involved in using your workbooks. Virgo season, very hands-on.
Absolutely.
But also, this astrology stuff is useful and can help you. So this is just yet another tool of how to take advantage of it. So I encourage people to try that out. I don't have a whole lot. I just am continuing to talk about meditations that I offer with each season. And I'm just more and more adding wellness resources to my blog posts. So that's just something else that I am working on.
Yeah, and we're both available for consultations and teaching and mentoring and all of that. And the other thing I want to just mention for those of you that might be new here, go check out some of our videos, like the astrobiographies, where we really dig into individual fascinating people's charts. And I'm hoping that we're going to do some more of those coming up soon.
Yeah.
So yeah, check out some of that stuff.
Great. Yeah. And I mean, you're reminding me too that there are other videos you'll hear us mention things and you're like, oh, Venus is retrograde or that kind of thing. You can go back and look at those videos to get more information. But without further ado, let's dig into our Virgo new moon. Laurie, do you want to tell us about those moon phases?
Oh, yeah. For those of you that are new here, we go through this every time we come to a full moon and a new moon. And I'm sure some of you are bored with listening to this. But at any rate, when we talk about the new moon and the full moon, you really need to understand this is part of a cycle. And if you go out and watch the moon night by night, it changes all the time. And every month when we come to the new moon, that's when it's very dark out there. You go out, you're not going to see the moon at all because the moon is between us and the sun. So it doesn't have the space to reflect the light. So at the new moon is when the two of them come together. And we can think about this as relating to the plant cycle, where at the new moon, we plant a seed. A week after the new moon, we come to the first quarter moon, which is a time that it's really a good time to take action on the development of the seed you planted at the new moon. A week after that, we come to the full moon, which is illumination of the seed that you planted. So in the plant cycle, that would be the full blossoming of the flower. And then a week after that, we come to the third quarter, the last quarter moon, where we start to break down the season in preparation for the following new moon a week after that. And that's the quick 28-day cycle. It's a very quick cycle. You can extend that cycle out where this Virgo new moon will be illuminated at the Virgo full moon, which happens, when did we say that happens? In February of 2024. Late February, February 24th, 2024 will be the Virgo full moon. And that's a longer cycle that you can think about as you plant the seed for this new moon of how it will be fully illuminated at that point.
Yeah, and the shorter full moon is September 29th will be the full moon. And that's actually going to be an Aries full moon because we'll be in Libra season by then. So again, we have that theme where we have a Virgo new moon seed being planted, and then you're going to see the results of that at an Aries full moon. So it's going to be a very self kind of focused full moon. And we'll make a video for that too. So it's always interesting being at the new moon, though. There's a little bit of magic with the new moon. I mean, just picture what happens when you plant a seed in the soil and you cover it over. It's like you don't know what's going to happen. There's a mystery. And so in a lot of ways, there's a setting of an intention that you're hoping, but you don't really know how it's going to go. You just set the intention and then you just kind of get to work, right?
Right.
Which is actually very much a theme of this Virgo one. So
Yeah, this particular one is
Mhm.
even more so in that regard of there's a mystery here.
Yeah. Virgo, what's the deal with Virgo, Laurie?
Oh my God, Virgo, Virgo has a pretty bad reputation. People talk
Mhm.
about it being picky and critical and all those things. I love Virgo. It's one of my all-time favorite signs because of Virgo just has such a clarity around it sees potential in things. And unfortunately, the struggle for Virgo is that it really wants to reach the perfection of that potential it sees. So it can get critical and picky in trying to get to that point. But that's when things are kind of a little out of whack. Virgo, the real gift of Virgo to me is the level of humility and the work ethic. The work ethic, the humility, and the fact that whatever Virgo is trying to perfect, it is trying to perfect not so that everyone will sit around and say how great they are, but for the purpose of being of service to others. I love Virgo. I think there's a kindness in Virgo. I think it's that humility that impresses me about Virgo itself.
Yeah, I know. I really like the humbleness of it. That's so important and a good reminder, I think some of the thing with Virgo is that it's a good keyword for it is optimize. And so it's trying to optimize either for service or for efficiency. It depends exactly what's going on, but that's part of the thing. It has to, by definition, get rid of some things. It has to kind of cut away the fat from the meat, or it has to let the chaff separate from the wheat. That's something it must happen. And that's sometimes where some of the skill that Virgo needs to learn is how to do that skillfully, how to sift things more skillfully so it's not so harsh. And that's kind of what part of the lesson is with Virgo, because it has to do that. We have to let things go that aren't working. We have to cut away things that are just kind of dead weight to whatever process, as we streamline the process, as we work to be really efficient. So that's part of why a little behind the scenes of what happens with Virgo at times. The key thing here is, Virgo loves to clear out the clutter. So that is definitely some of our theme. But something you have to pay attention to is it has to be adaptable. It has to look at the environment and go, oh, wait, this different thing is happening than what I expected. So I need to adjust and change exactly what I'm doing. I need to make sure that I'm addressing the problem that is clearly making itself known here. So I think that plays into it as well.
Yeah, I think just thinking about it as Virgo is the mutable earth sign. So the mutability is that what you're talking about, Jenny, the adaptability, the ability to adapt and be flexible in the moment. And Virgo is able to do that. And then with the earth, it is the practical. It is about practical things. Virgo isn't, about imagination. It's about what's right in front of you, what's practical, what needs to be done in order to be of service, in order to refine and make things efficient and workable.
Yeah. And there is a relationship to data too, of like kind of analyzing the data so it knows which thing it's supposed to do. But one of the tasks we certainly want to get across in this video is just making sure that you're tuning into your environment so that you can adapt to making sure that you're not, because you don't want to be barking up the wrong tree. Like you don't want to be you know, like if you have guests coming to stay and you need to make up the room for them, great, make up the room. Like, don't get caught like, oh, I did the dishes, but I didn't put the sheets on the bed, and whoops, you don't have a place to sleep. I mean, so there's a need to prioritize which thing you need to be doing, and not to squander or waste that limited amount of energy that you have to get something done. And that's, Virgo is very much concerned with, make sure you're prioritizing in the right direction. So
Okay.
okay, so let's,
I think that's enough about Virgo. Oh, I guess the only other thing I want to say about Virgo
it's all
is,
something else.
yeah, there's always something else. Yeah, it's an earth sign, it's a mutable sign, and it's ruled by Mercury. So it is very much a mental process that is involved here. And it's not the mental process of Gemini of collecting information. It's about taking information and analyzing it. Yeah, it's a real analysis kind of mental process. So
yeah, and then applying it to the practical world. So it's like,
right,
keeping it in that earth realm. Yeah, nice.
Back to the depth. Yeah. Okay. So let's open up the chart that we've got here. And
okay,
and see our little Virgo images.
Oh, look at it. So I'd like to, let's see. You will see, look at Laurie's artwork here. Draw your attention. It's I like, there's a lot of characters on this page. That's great. But what I would like to talk about before we dive into the aspects here is that this Virgo new moon is happening at 21 degrees of Virgo. Now, this is an interesting number because 21 degrees of Virgo is the exact degree that Mercury turned retrograde at on August 23rd. So what this does is this extends this process further out into the whole Virgo season. So here's the new moon reiterating that 21 degrees point. So for a moment, think back to August 23rd to see if anything comes to mind as a process that may have started when Mercury retrograded. And then what is also interesting is Mercury is going to station direct right after this new moon the next day. So in this picture, Mercury is still retrograde, so we're still doing internal thinking and internal processing. Like, we're not ready to share everything we've been thinking about with the world yet, but the very next day it's going to station direct, and then several more things are going to unfold to kind of extend this new moon process out. So you're going to plant the seed at the new moon, and then you're going to kind of see this unfoldment happen, and it's going to unfold all the way until September 30th, which is the day that Mercury will once again reach 21 Virgo. So I'm telling you all this because it kind of extends out this whole Mercury retrograde Virgo process. It's interesting that it's exactly the same degree. So think about what is covering that whole distance in your life. Like, what's going on in your life that's been going on since the end of August. Hopefully I made some sort of sense when I said that. Laurie, you have anything you want to add to that, or
no, I think that it is really fascinating that this new moon is right on that same degree. It definitely connects it to this retrograde, and it just it makes, when we get into the individual impacts, I think it just strengthens the fact that our attention is in this area and we have some work to do. We need to roll up our sleeves and do some necessary refining work in whatever area it falls in our own charts.
Yeah, I mean, part of this picture that I painted to you, extending it out to September 30th, bear in mind that September 29th, we have the full moon in Aries. So, in a normal moon phase process, that's what we're talking about, planting the seed and seeing the fruits of your labors at the full moon. So all that's holding true, but there's this added element of extending it out to a further longer process because of that Mercury retrograde. So think about the entire Virgo season and what's going on for you as you watch for your own personal impact. So,
right.
Yeah.
Okay, so then what else do we have to look at here? There's some very interesting things going on with this full moon.
Yeah, I know. Let's start with the kind of, there's a few things, but the very clear one is, or the very unclear one is, it's opposite for Neptune. So we have a Neptune opposition to the new moon. It's just it's fascinating. It kind of introduces this big picture, but what it also says is that you don't really know what the big picture is because it's Neptune and it's Pisces. So it's not like this crystal clear picture. It's more of this fuzzy picture. So,
Yeah, I feel like, there's something in here about some point of confusion. And I think this will be easier to talk about when we get into the personal impacts. There's something that's a little confusing, and yet our job is to just let that sit there. Let it be confusing. Don't try to dig around and figure out what it is that's confusing you. What you want to do is the practical tasks that are right in front of you. And that will ultimately open up the clarity. I think, the fact that just the degrees, 21 degrees for the sun and moon, 26 for Neptune, it's not clear yet. It's not fully in line yet. Don't worry about the clarity at this moment. Just worry about the task that needs to be done. And the really beautiful thing, am I moving ahead too fast?
I was just going to comment that September 19th is part of, that's going to be when the sun exactly opposes Neptune. So that is going to be part of, it seems like a piece will drop into view at that point, a clearer piece. So that's it though. Yeah,
Yeah, I think that's really interesting to put that date on there. Thank you.
Yeah.
And then the other thing that's happening at this new moon is a grand trine with the sun and moon and Pluto in Capricorn and Uranus in Taurus. This is very interesting. And then we can extend this to sextiles from both of those planets to Neptune. So this is bringing in all of the outer transpersonal planets to really support the process of what seed do you need to plant? What, you're really being supported. Well, it's interesting. We talked about this a little bit before, that what your task is being supported by the bigger picture, by bigger forces. And the task that you are doing is for the support of the bigger picture. It goes both ways here. But this is really a beautiful configuration.
Yeah. And I mean, this is really a statement about you may not have all the answers, you may not know everything, but what you do know is steps 1, 2, and 3 that you need to do. Wow. And then once you do steps 1, 2, and 3, 4, 5, and 6 are going to become more clear, and so on. And so what this really suggests is that your small tasks, your small things that you choose to do really do have an impact. I have this little image of like your little cog and there's this massive machinery, and that your cog plays into that, and it's very important what you do. And it's hard to remember that as individuals. I think it's so easy to feel powerless and overwhelmed, and we don't really know, you don't know, how's my story impacting everyone else's, or does anything I do matter? And this is a statement of like, yes, it very much matters. And part of what matters is getting clear about what is your environment saying to you that you need to adapt to. There's that flexibility piece. So make sure that you're not just plunging on ahead without looking around. You're looking around, you're ruminating with that Mercury retrograde and really considering deeply what is the thing that you need to do. And then you just do it. That's kind of what the statement is.
Yeah. And I think the adaptability piece is so important. And as you listen to this, and if you're listening to this a few days before the new moon, you want to be careful and not like decide, well, this is the seed I'm going to plant and just like, that's it. You want to make sure that you've got that flexibility in there. You can get a great idea of what it is. But if you wake up the morning of that new moon ready to do your ritual or however you do this work, and something else that is also connected to the same body of what needs to be done is actually asking for your attention, that flexibility and adaptability is so important. Do what's necessary in the moment in front of you.
Yeah.
I have to
is there a cat?
I have to step away for a moment. The cat is yeah.
Well, what I'm also noticing about this is Lori stepping away and dealing with cat. Also that Jupiter trines the new moon here. So I just want to mention that. You can see that Jupiter is in the mix as well.
Oh, what did you say, Jenny? I'm sorry.
Oh, see, I was just mentioning that Jupiter is trining the new moon as well.
Oh, yeah. Wow.
And
I
I'm saying it
didn't
because it's there and it should be mentioned.
Oh, yes, it should be.
Yeah.
That's
Because
wow.
the other funny thing is like, so Jupiter has been at 15 degrees this whole season because it's stationed retrograde in the middle of it. So I keep seeing Jupiter as this, core, central, very, very stable thing that's sort of saying, here's how to benefit, create benefits for others. Here's how to be, really and dig into that beneficial component. So I just want to add it because it's in the mix too. So
Yeah, it's so interesting as Jupiter approaches Uranus, and I think they come together next year, 2024.
yeah,
It's just such an interesting time, and we
very
are
dynamic.
approaching it. They're not that far away from each other at this point, and they are coming together, and it's really, yeah, it's going to be an interesting one to see that wake up call happen.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, this is quite, I mean, this is a little interesting little picture it paints. And just once again, it's just tying in the individual to the much bigger collective picture. For those of you who are a little bit more astro geeks, this is what's called a kite formation when you have a grand trine with an opposition to another planet. And then the sextiles, and obviously, I mean, it looks like a kite, right? So that's what we're looking at. And it's very dynamic because it has the trine is a nice flow of energy, but what that opposition really pulls some action out of the whole thing. Like it really makes a focal point. And in this case, the sun and the moon are just absolutely the focal point.
Another thing that this makes me think of is just, let me see if I can think how I wanted to say this. Is there some thought in here about really being aware of how much I mean, it goes back to the same thing we've been talking about, how much our little actions matter.
Mm-hmm.
There's something about a grand trine that we can almost get complacent about, or it's like, oh, well, everything's moving pretty smoothly here, so, I'm not really needed. Well,
yeah,
this is
especially
so important to pay attention, because those little actions, even if they're just a tiny little drop, makes a big, big difference. I think that's really, really prominent in this moment.
I think so too.
If what your personal new moon task ends up being is, dusting off the bookshelves, okay, it might not seem like it means anything, but it means something somehow.
Yeah, and even some of those tasks can be metaphorical too. Like they can help give you a tangible task that represents a more inner process or a more emotional process. So that's part, physical and mental health isn't all just within your body. It's what you do outside of yourself too. So I think, yeah, I mean, it's that. And then the other thing about this picture is just how that with the grand trine thing, well, it's not completed yet. The sun hasn't quite opposed Neptune yet. It hasn't quite trined Uranus yet. It hasn't quite trined Pluto yet. So those things all unfold over the course of that time period, of like September 19th, September 21st, it's all boom, boom, boom. So it kind of gives you this time to, really think about what you want to do before you actually just have to do it, so it gives you time to adjust. It gives you time to evaluate and adjust and then make the decision. So
and then do the thing. Just do the thing.
Do the thing. That's the title. Do the thing.
Do the thing. That's the title.
Okay.
Do the thing.
All right. Good.
So are we ready? Let me get rid of this, and we'll move on to, whoops. Folks with Aries rising have this new moon occurring in their 6th house. So if we want to take it from the most simple, do the thing. What is the thing? If the new moon is in the 6th house, you need to plant a seed of an intention of doing something very practical in your day-to-day routines. And this could be, this could have to do with your daily meditation practice, your daily yoga practice, your daily writing practice, your daily walk in the woods, your daily washing the dishes, whatever those routines are. At this point, you want to plant a seed to maybe start a new routine. And one of the best ways to start new routines is to attach it to a routine that is very well embedded in you. So if you every day brush your teeth at the same time of day and you want to add on a new routine, just add it to that. So, there's some way in which, with the Neptune in the opposite house, you may be being a little distracted by some confusion in your spiritual understanding or your internal psychological process. There may be something that's confusing to you, but the task right now is just in those daily routines.
Yeah, and then, the adaptation piece comes in. Make sure, when you look around you and you kind of think, what do I really need right now? And that might be that you're looking around, you're evaluating for yourself, like, have I been extra anxious lately? Do I need to incorporate some kind of grounding practice that's going to help me deal that head on? Or, gosh, like I just have been so bad about, like, the dishes examples, like staying on top of that. Like, you need to kind of look and adjust your environment in order to determine what you need. And because it's the 6th house with, Neptune over there in the 12th house, you really want to check in with your physical and mental health. Like, are your routines supporting your physical health? How are you doing mentally? Like, what do you maybe need to adjust in your daily practice that can help you? Because, in, the big picture, you're like, I don't know. How can you do anything about the big picture? Well, the answer is to just get into the minutia of the routines and make the adjustments there, because that's where the ripple effect is going to happen from. So
yeah, you might need to just clean out your junk drawer.
Oh no, not that. Yeah.
Okay, let's move on to those of you with Taurus rising.
So with Taurus rising, this Virgo new moon is happening in your 5th house. The 5th house, all about creativity, the way that you give of yourself. So, you can picture yourself pouring yourself into some creative project that you love. And with Virgo here, it's like you're really going to want to plant the seed to just, clear out the space so you can get the job done. It's funny having Virgo in the 5th house because it's such a creative place, but yet it's something about, I keep thinking of having like it's almost like you have an art studio and you want to, maybe you want to make some prints or something like that. Well, you've got to clear off the table. You've got to kind of clear everything out and then get things set up. And then that way you can just get started creating. Like, that's the kind of process you want to engage with as you think about what you're doing here.
Yeah, and that 5th house, it's really where we give of ourselves. So the creativity is a huge part of that 5th house. And also, children can be a part of that, or love affairs. It's that 5th house is really where we give of ourselves most selflessly. And so, yeah, there's something really practical that needs to be done. Yeah, clean out the art studio, clean up the kids' room. There is some distraction coming from your community. Perhaps you need to do some cleanup in your art studio or the kids' room or whatever it is, and yet you'd really rather go play with your community or develop new goals in a community fashion. But right now, rather than looking at that big picture, rather than focusing on that, you just need to do the thing, the practical thing, the service, and you need to be adaptable about what it is.
Yeah. It's easy to get overwhelmed, with that bigger picture of what do I need to do for my community? I really want to help. I really want to, do these things. And it's like, well, but then just go back to the minutia of your creative tasks, because that's going to help you understand what you need to do, right?
Yeah. And as you're saying that, I'm thinking just, make cupcakes to bring to your community gathering. Just focus on creating something, pouring yourself into it and allowing that to take the space of the concern, the confusion of who your community is, what your community is, what goals you need support in. You know, that's where there's a bit of confusion coming from.
Yeah, and with Taurus rising, it's like part of the way you express yourself is through something tangible. So I love that you've brought up cupcakes, bringing cupcakes as part of something that you contribute, because it is that kind of thing. It's that nourishing, but it's not just a cupcake. It's a way that you show appreciation for somebody. It's the way that you really give them a tangible way of knowing that you love them. I mean, it really is that with the earth sign on the ascendant. So yeah.
Okay, well, let's move on to those of you with Gemini rising. So this puts this Virgo new moon in your 4th house, which is the house of home, family, your root core, your ancestry, all of that. So you want to really think about what is the seed that you want to plant here? What do you want to begin? What process do you want to begin within your home or family? Some practical task-based beginning here. And, thinking about with that, the opposition, the Neptune, which will be falling in your 10th house, there may be some confusion. It might be really easy right now to kind of not be paying attention to those details because there's some confusion coming from the area of career or your bigger reputation. The bigger world is distracting you from these details at home. Perhaps the task you need to do is clean up your house. Perhaps the task is make a meal for your family, gather your family for some practical, tangible, maybe the whole family needs to come together to do a task. And really focusing on that and letting the problems in your career, the confusion up there, just let that sit. It will gain clarity over the coming weeks. But yeah, the task is something very practical and adaptable. Don't get too set on exactly what it has to be.
Yeah, it's just, I think with the Gemini rising one, it's very easy to say, hey, just, time to clean the house, but I think it's important, and that might be it, like you just said, but it's also very metaphorical. There's some way that you may need to clean up some clutter for yourself at your foundation, to clean out the roots somehow so that you can just have sit easy with it, basically, is kind of what I was thinking. And yeah, the adaptability piece is exactly that question. What needs your attention? What type of clutter do you need to, clear out? I mean, is it really your home or is it something else? Because it also would be easy to get sort of caught and, it's the same old thing I always do. I need to clean the house so I feel better. Well, it might be something else this time. So there's something about paying attention. Who really needs help? What kind of service do you need to give in your family, or to your home, or to something that's at the roots of your personality? That's the thing you need to ask yourself, and then do it.
Yeah, as a symbolic language, there's all those different layers. The 4th house can be, it might be sweeping the floors, or it might be managing in some practical way, bringing a meal to your grandmother, or so there's all these different layers, but it's something around home and family. And yeah, the adaptability is looking at it, being discerning enough to see what it is.
Yeah, it is interesting to think of it as like the lineage thing, the kind of the deeper, more hidden private meaning of the 4th house is something from your, that heralds from your genetics. I mean, it could go further back. But at any rate, what you want to do is to make sure that it is in service too. Like if you're trying to track down your genetic code or something like that, it's like, well, make sure you know why you're doing it. Why do you want to do something like that? Anyway, I think we've
it's whatever that is. There's a bigger service piece to it. There's you need to do these tasks to be of service. Okay, so just do it is the bottom line. Now we're going to move on to those Cancer rising.
So Cancer rising, this Virgo new moon falls in your 3rd house. It's interesting because the third house is the house of your environment, your immediate environment. So this is where the first thing you need to think about is what is going on in your immediate environment. So that means your neighborhood, the little errands that you do, like all the things that are going on just in that place that's your immediate proximity. So that's going to be part of this. In some ways, this is very simple because it's the third house. It's like, what logistics do you need to take care of? What details do you need to take care of? It could be something to do with communication, because the third house has to do with communication. It could be writing. These are some of the pieces that you're going to be working with. What do you need to clear out to make room for so that you can get to work here? So,
and there's also, you know, if you think about that third house in terms of neighbors, siblings, you know, those people that are in your immediate environment that you don't really choose, but they're in your immediate environment. You know, what task or what conversation will be of service in that environment, in that relationship. There's something there, you know, there may be a conversation that needs to happen. So
yeah, we were talking, I mean, I think, Laurie, you brought up an interesting point earlier when we were talking about this one, about just like, you know, the idea that's like maybe these lofty goals that you have, and that's great around your education because that Neptune's up there in your ninth house. But the reality is you got to get to work and do the nuts and bolts of applying for the thing, or, you know, like you're never going to be able to advance your education if you don't sort of research what school you want to go to and then fill out the application paperwork, right? Like that's a pretty good description of what you might need to work with here.
Yeah, that Neptune in the ninth house, there's something a little confusing, something unclear around. And I love that you use the lofty goals. I mean, there's something there. Maybe you want to travel, maybe you want to go back to school, maybe, you know, there's some confusion around your worldview. Well, okay, let that confusion sit there. Be confused. You don't know yet. You don't know yet, because Neptune is in the picture here. So you don't know yet. So what your job is those details of communication or filling out the paperwork or being of service to a neighbor. Yeah, it is really very simple.
Yeah, I mean, the only way you are going to know is by taking those, you know, tiny little steps. I mean, that's how things get revealed. So, which is the theme for all of
signs, Virgo really is such a great sign because it is so much about those little details. I love Virgo. Okay, we're going to move on then to folks who have Leo rising. So this puts the Virgo New Moon in your second house. So, you know, the first thing you want to think about is what's going on in your second house. The second house is the area where we really think of things like, well, your self-worth, your self-esteem, but also money and resources. And I always think that the second house is really about how those two tie together, how what you have, what you own, what your resources are, what your bank account is, how that impacts your self-worth, and vice versa. They're very, very closely connected. So you want to think about what is going on in that area. What is the task that you need to do? The task, you know, I don't know what, maybe it's something to do with, I don't know, what would be a task? Opening a new bank account, or doing something to really support your self-worth, maybe spending some money on yourself that will uplift you in some way.
We're doing some kind of minutia, like I was thinking about this recently at the age, like some kind of minutia, like maybe you've saved a little bit of money for retirement and it's time to push that money into a higher interest account, like something really minutia like that, that involves a lot of little tiny moving parts where you got to figure out who you're going to do that with. And I think it's a good analogy, you know, thinking that sort of thing, like is your money in the right place? Do you need to do something else with it? Like that's the adjustment part.
And with Neptune in the house opposite it, with Neptune in the 8th house, there's some confusion about either how you share your money or resources with other people, or, you know, am I going to get that inheritance? I mean, there's all kinds of ways that this could play out. but there's something regarding other people's values, other people's money, other people's resources, or shared resources that is a little bit unclear to you. So the task is, forget that. It doesn't matter. Maybe you'll receive a huge inheritance from grandma. Maybe you won't. The point is, right now, you've got to deal with your own resources. You've got to do something like Jennie said. You've got to, make sure your resources are in a place where they are supported. And the clarity about grandma's money will come through at some point.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's some, speculation if you have Pisces there in the eighth house, and there's some confusion about it. It's like if you find yourself, I don't know, like if your mind kind of wanders into other people's money and whatever other people's issues are with money, or whatever some frustration is around other people's values, that's just a little reminder to, like, I mean, you kind of said it, Laurie, but just like, you don't need to worry about that. Like, it kind of gets you off the hook. Like, you don't need to worry. If you feel confused about that, just step away from it and just focus on something really concrete and tangible that has to do with you and your values and your money and your resources and so on and so forth. Like, that really is what is being asked. And part of the adaptability of Virgo is to be able to discern whether or not you're getting over involved emotionally in somebody else's values and money and baggage. Like, you don't have to. You can just say no thanks, so
I really love that you said it lets you off the hook, because I feel like this new moon in a lot of ways does exactly that. It lets us off the hook about worrying about the bigger picture and kind of trusting with that grand trine going on. There is there's a real sense of, letting us off the hook. We can trust that the bigger picture is supported by the details right now. And all we have to pay attention to is the details. So do what you need to do. Start a new bank account, move your money where it needs to be adaptable in that. And we're going to move on to those with Virgo rising.
So the Virgo rising, this new moon is firmly in your first house, which is kind of a, when Virgo is in your first house, that means you have an overall life direction that is concerned with service and being helpful and having humility with other people. So that's a pretty big statement about your life overall. So to have this new moon there is really kind of saying, make sure you're in alignment with that life direction for yourself. Make sure that you have some awareness of that being part of your purpose, and that now is your moment to kind of think about what actions you can take, what little steps you can take that completely align you with that whole overall life direction. It's pretty personal to have Virgo in your first house when the new moon is right there. So this might be a way that you need to make a change in your appearance, or you need to make a change in your personal development. There might be some other step that you need to take. So it's going to be extra helpful for you to really use the Virgo discernment to understand what it is that you need to do. Like, what steps would you need to take? So, I mean, that's a pretty good starting point, I think.
Yeah, I definitely, that's a great starting point. Something about your personal presentation that needs to be refined. And there's some confusion coming from the area of partnership, whether it be business partners or intimate partners. There's some confusion there. You're not quite sure where you stand in a relationship, but what you really need to do is not worry about it. So like you said in the last one, this kind of lets you off the hook. It kind of lets you off the hook. Don't worry about it. That will all become clear. It will all work itself out. Right now, your job is to just determine what the action is on a very personal level that you have to do to be of service, to be helpful with your personality.
Yeah. Kind of like getting a chiropractic alignment. It's like, just line it up. It just needs to be popped into place, just have so that you can line up with what your overall purpose is. So
I think I really love this new moon, but I was just distracted while you were talking there for a minute, because I realized that when I did this, look at this, it says that the new moon happens at 9:39 m. Is it AM or PM? It's PM, right?
It's PM. Yep.
Well,
you don't need to know. You don't need to worry about that.
right. It lets you off the hook.
No, it is a it's just
Okay, yep. 9:39.
Yes.
Okay. So we're going to move
All right.
on to those with Libra rising.
Ooh la
Now,
la.
if you have Libra rising, this new moon is happening in your 12th house. So the first thing you're going to think about is what's going on in your deep unconscious, or what's going on around your ideas of spirituality, or how you are working with your own unconscious demons or internal patterns. There's some process in there that needs to be tweaked in a practical way. You need to take action, and that action, taking an action on your unconscious or your spiritual, what's hidden from you, could be as simple as taking a walk in the woods and allowing an opening in your awareness. It could be, buying a self-help book. I don't know, something. But, the confusion here comes from the 6th house. So there's some way in which your day-to-day routines are not quite making sense to you. There's something in how you function in that day-to-day life that is confusing you. Maybe you don't really know what your patterns of life should be. There's a confusion there. So forget about that confusion. Go take a walk in the woods. Allow a little opening into your unconscious or spirituality. Yeah. I'm missing
this one,
Jen.
Well, I was just gonna say, I mean, I just get this image of, like, I was talking to someone recently who's older and just realizing that it's really, really important to start doing strength training, like when you're in your 40s or 50s or whatever. But the confusion around, but I don't know where to start. I don't even know what to do. I don't know which thing. I'm not good at making a routine, blah, 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 blah. I'm just having some confusion. And that's, that's fine. That would, if one has Libra rising, it's going to be normal to not be really clear. But the thing to do is, I mean, you've kind of already said this in the beginning, but the thing to do is, in your subconscious processes, is just to hone in on the one thing. What's the one thing that could help? What is the one thing you need to do? And maybe in my example here of the strength training, it's that you need to do some research and you need to have somebody else tell you the first part, but what matters is that you're saying, for my physical and mental health, I need to take this one simple action, and it all feels overwhelming. It is in the 12th house after all. But the thing to do is just to get clear about the one thing that can kind of be the key to unlock the other pieces. So you're just focusing in on the key, not worrying about all the other stuff. But that's kind of what was coming to my mind. And that Virgo is very adaptable. And so you're going to need to use that to really understand what is the best thing for you right now. Like, instead of driving yourself crazy trying to figure it out, just
just take an action.
Clear.
Take an action to open up. I just keep thinking of that, that opening that the 12th house allows us, and it could come in intuition. Pay attention around this new moon. You want to really pay attention to your intuition, because that's what's going to tell you what the one thing is, what the practical action is going to be illuminated from somewhere deep inside.
Yeah. And it might, I mean, one thing we talk a lot about here at the 12th house, Laurie, is a therapist. And that would be a great example of, it's time to get that therapist, like this new moon. And I've already, maybe you're like, I've already researched, I know it's going to be, I want to do face-to-face. And that's the one thing you need to figure out. And then you just isolate from there, who's going to be the right one. I mean, it really is that, to engage yourself in that kind of process. Because it is, the 12th house is a lot, right? It's a lot to kind of, it's hard to say, hey, get practical about the 12th house. It's like the hardest one to really do that.
Right. Being practical in the 12th house. flips into easily flips into the more negative side of Virgo, which is I'm so self-critical. I'm so self-critical. And that really can be a trap for people with Libra rising, is this internal critic. And finding, that seed that you're planting really is to kind of untie that internal critic.
Yeah, I mean, you're making me realize too, Laurie. I mean, it could be something, a simple affirmation. If that's your voice, I'm so dumb or whatever, just turn it, make it 180, and say, okay,
sometimes
that's really simple.
Yeah, these things like affirmations, in some ways that, there's a part of my brain that's like, oh, that's a little silly, or whatever, but it can be extremely powerful. And if you've got that critical inner voice, that may be exactly what you need to do, is work on really developing a practice ultimately that supports bringing in more self-compassion to that inner voice of yours.
Yeah, because I was just thinking, it's as simple as writing it down. If you come up, like, if your normal one is to be really critical, it might be something like, no, I'm a worthwhile person who's here to be of service. And you write that statement down, and you write it on your bathroom mirror, you write it on your whiteboard, you write it at the top of your journal when you sit down, like that, and just practice that and see what that does. I mean, it is that kind of thing, because that, and back to that reference I made earlier of like the key, you're trying to find the key that opens the lock. Maybe that's the thing, and it's something simple, and it's something tangible that you can come up with like that, right?
Yeah, and it's just so interesting to think about somebody with a Libra rising. They show up trying to please everybody, and then that self-criticism that is hidden behind that people don't necessarily see easily. So finding that key. That's beautiful. Okay, we're going to move on. We just spent a lot of time on Libra.
I know, they got extra.
They did get extra. Okay, moving on to Scorpio rising.
Well, Scorpio rising, this Virgo new moon is falling in your 11th house of community. Again, community is that place of people who are like-minded, not necessarily your buddies and your best friends, but the people around you that support you. I think my favorite analogy is going to the yoga class, because you don't necessarily talk to the people in the class. This is my personal experience, but nonetheless, you know them, you know their faces, you see them, they support you, you support them. So just to get you to really be clear about what community is, and this Virgo new moon is a great time to plant a new seed that has to do with your community. Bear in mind that this is about how you get supported by your community. I mean, you're there and you're showing up and you're putting in your effort, and they're really there to support you. You keep going back to that yoga class because you feel supported, because you feel seen, and this is part of what you're planting the seed for, is to seek out those kinds of practices. At the same time, there might be quite a bit of confusion about what do you have to offer. You're not really sure. You've got Neptune in the 5th house over there opposite this. Maybe you don't really know what your gift is that you can bring the community. And the thing is it doesn't matter. What matters right now is that you plant the seed for the new thing that we would like to do, the practical task you'd like to do that is to do with your community. And that's the main thing you want to focus on, and where your effort should be. Like, what is it that you need to do? I mean, that's where you're going to need to get some clarity.
It's an interesting placement to me, thinking of the 11th house as where we receive. And yet it's Virgo, which is all about being of service. But I guess, it's in the act of being of service that people with Scorpio rising are supported by community. So, it's both. You get kind of both in here. So what is the key? What is the one thing that you need to do at this new moon that will really support clarity a lot? I love that polarity. The 5th to the 11th house is such a wonderful polarity, and this is really, you have to plant a seed of what is the one thing that you can bring of practical value to community?
I know. It's all funny, isn't it? Because that 11th house really, really has to do with your ability to receive support and love. So it's kind of like you're planting the seed, but really you need to be able to be more open to allow that support to come in. So it's almost like what practical task can you do to open yourself up more? That which speaks to almost like, again, like a sort of an affirmation or kind of a journaling practice, like how can I be more open to let the support, because that's how you find your people, and you already are going to be of value, you already are going to be of use and of service because you're showing up, I mean, to community. I mean, you don't have community unless everybody's participating and involved, right? Like that's the
Yeah.
key.
And, the
Yeah.
underlying thing with that 11th house too is our goals. It's the community that the 11th house is we keep saying it's the community that supports us. It's the community that supports us to our goals. When I was first learning astrology 200 years ago, the 11th house was really talked about more as our hopes and dreams for the future. And so it's really is, it's about our hopes and dreams for the future and the people that support us to that. So, maybe the seed you're planting may have more to do with what your hopes and dreams are for the future. What is the practical way in which, what is a practical goal that you could plant a seed for, and then the community builds around that?
It might be that you need to use this Virgo New Moon to sort of assess some of your skill sets and be willing to seek out a new community that could be something that would be part of this too. I mean, that would certainly fit the new moon, it's a new thing. So that, I mean, because you might be asking yourself, maybe and this is a common thing these days, but you might be going, well, I don't know who my community is. I don't have a whole lot of community. I don't feel that. So this is a good time to reflect on that and reflect on what kind of community would you want, and then take those first little practical steps, which might be just simply envisioning what that would look like. So it's all depends on you, because everybody who's watching this, you've got a different life story. So reflect on those things and see what comes up, and then post a comment.
Yeah. And plant a seed for something practical to begin. Find a new hope, a new goal for the future, a new envisioning of the community that will support you to that. Okay. I think we're ready to move on, and we're going to go on to those of you who have Sagittarius rising. So for those of you with Sagittarius rising, this new moon is falling in your 10th house, which is the area of the chart that represents career, reputation. This is the most public house. It's where the world sees you. So the first thing you're going to want to think about is what's going on in that area. What practical changes are necessary? What do you need to refine in your reputation or your career? This could show up in many, many ways, clearly. There's usually, for most people's careers, there's lots of practical details that need to be done in that area. And those of you with Sagittarius rising, Virgo is in that 10th house. So your career is very much around analysis and planning, probably in some ways. So there's some details that need to be refined. Now, the confusion is coming from home. How is there some aspect, some thing that is occurring within your home and family that may be distracting you from the efforts that you're putting into your career? Don't worry about them. Do the thing. Plant the seed. Clean out your inbox. Whatever. There's some detail in your job area that you need to do.
Yeah, I almost think sometimes I'm looking at this chart and I'm thinking that maybe it's a relief to have the tangible nuts and bolts of things that you have to do at work. Like you just make a checklist. I mean, it depends on what your career is, of course, but you have some sort of checklist, and you can kind of check things off. I need to do this, I need to do that, I need to do this, and that is really in opposition to, I mean, literally and figuratively to, yes, that the home life maybe doesn't feel so clear. I mean, I also see that maybe the home life is quite relaxing and quiet and dreamlike. I don't know that many people with a home life like that, but some people do. So I just wanted to note that too, and that that the Virgo new moon is showing you where you can make a really practical contribution. Because the 10th house is considered a contribution too. But again, the big thing here is you need to kind of look around your environment. You need to tap the adaptability of Virgo and make sure that you're kind of putting your shoulder to the right wheel. You don't want to put all that effort and get the nuts and bolts done only to find out that you're working on the wrong project. That project got given to someone else. So, you want to make sure that you're on track with where you're aiming that. But other than that, it's really just get to work, roll the sleeves up, check off the things, and that's what you need to do here.
And I mean, this is a good time for those of you with Sagittarius rising. It's a good time to really get clear. Is my career path, is there an element of my career path that is for the service of others? If it's not, then your task here is to plant a seed to make sure that is really highlighted going forward. If you've got Sagittarius rising, your career has to be about being of service to others.
Yeah.
In some way.
Sure does.
Okay. Ready to go on?
Yeah, good.
Okay, next we come to Capricorn rising.
So Capricorn rising, that means that Virgo falls in your 9th house. And so the new moon and the seed that you need to plant has to do with your worldview. I always think, the 9th house is also the house of travel. So an easy analogy to think about this is like, what nuts and bolts do you need to do in order to travel? What do you need to plan? What steps do you need to take if you want to take that trip that has been calling you? I mean, that may not be fit exactly your situation, but it is a good analogy to think about what you need to minutia in order for something to happen. I don't know. I think that's really what we're looking at. I mean, the Virgo has a big adaptability component too. So it does require you to kind of think and ruminate on what is really warranted here. How can you be of service through your worldview? Is that trip you're going to take, is it totally self-oriented, or is there another purpose? Is there a service purpose? Is there something that you want to do in this other country, let's say, that really is of service to someone other than just your own curiosity? So those are some of curiosity is great, but Virgo is insistent that you consider other people, that you consider the service here. So those are some of the things that I think you're going to want to think about during this Virgo new moon.
Yeah.
I don't know, do you want to comment?
I just want to add, the it could be education as well. You might be needing to do the details to begin a new educational piece in your life. You can think about that. 9th house is fascinating because it encompasses all the things that expand our understanding of the world, and travel is a huge piece of it. As is education, or even religion, not spirituality, but religion, and politics, even all these things that really support our worldview. So you might be watching this and thinking, oh yeah, I want to take this trip, or I want to start a new educational path, or I want to go into politics, or I want to go to seminary, whatever these things are, or I want to join a new church, whatever those things are, it has to be, like you said, Jenny, there has to be this service oriented. Your worldview has to be for the purpose of being of service.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think, when you're talking about the opposition here, it suggests there's some type of confusion about some kind of logistical stuff that you're not sure about, or something about, could even, again, it could be neighbors, is a third house thing, could be something to do with a sibling. But at any rate, identify a source of confusion if there is one for you, and then let yourself off the hook. You don't have to worry about it. If there is a confusion, just trust that the work that you do in that ninth house to be of service is going to show you the path. It's going to let it unfold, and you're going to discover that you didn't really need to worry about that minutia, because it really is going to, or those, sorry, not minutia, confusion. It's going to make sense. It's going to come together, but you just have to take the action in the house of wisdom.
So for this, the
Mhm.
key, the one thing you need to do probably involves making a plan, just beginning. The seed is, what is the travel? What is the education piece? What is the thing that you want to begin that is going to broaden your understanding of the world? So take that action. It might be as simple as getting online and looking up the school that's going to teach you X, Y, and Z.
Yeah, you don't have to do it quite yet. So you just have to take that initial action. It's funny doing these reversals, right?
Yeah,
I don't know.
it's interesting, isn't it? Okay, so
Okay.
now we're going to move on to those with Aquarius rising. So this puts the Virgo new moon in your 8th house. The 8th house is such an interesting house. It's really about other people's, I always think of it as other people's baggage. It's
Yeah.
other people's values. It's other people's money, shared resources. It's all about our own ability to navigate other people's deep emotions, really. So what you would be doing, if you're thinking about a practical seed to plant in the 8th house, it probably involves something around boundaries, some simple detail around setting boundaries in your relationships with people who you have to navigate their stuff. Right? Does that make sense,
Yeah.
Jenny?
Yeah, well, because it's an earth sign in the 8th house. So there's definitely something around. I see it as this. It's actually a very Virgo thing to think about it, because I think that there's a lot of confusion about what boundaries are, right?
Oh,
And
yeah.
so you have to engineer, you have to analyze, adapt, and engineer just the right boundary for the moment. It's going to look different if you're needing to draw a boundary with a loved one, a partner, versus needing to draw a boundary because you're in a scary situation and you're like, oh, I need to get out of here. I mean, those are two very different types of boundaries you would need to draw, but they're both boundaries. So there's something about knowing what sort of boundary you need. Like, can you, because if you draw too harsh of a boundary, you're not going to be of service. You're going to not be doing the Virgo service piece. So you need to draw the right kind of boundaries so that you can still be helpful in the right kind of way, whatever the situation is that you have in your mind when we're talking about this.
It's interesting, people with Aquarius rising really do have an ability to navigate those areas very differently, because there is such an ability to be adaptive and be of service in that area.
Yeah.
So
Mhm.
for those of you with this situation, the confusion is probably coming from your own values or your own finances. There's some confusion that is pulling your attention away from the simple task of managing some other person in your life. Your attention is being kind of pulled in this confusion about what your own values are. So you need to let go
Yeah.
of that and just set the boundary, do the thing, support the person, even though you may not, their values may be different than yours. It doesn't matter. Your job in this situation is to do the task to support someone whose values are unlike your own, I think.
Yeah, I think that's a good synopsis, and I like, the piece of, not being quite sure where you fit, like how you value yourself or whatever your thing is. And like, yeah, it's just like, you don't have to worry about that right this second. Like that's going to come clear, that's going to come out in the open. Because as you do this action of, setting this boundary or in being of service in the situation you're describing, it's actually going to start helping you define who you are and what kind of person are you, and so on and so forth. So you just don't quite have the information yet, so you really don't need to worry about it. Just do what you can do to help this person, or to
just do the thing, and know it's more important than you might think. It's important. Okay, so now we're going to move on to folks with Pisces rising.
The Pisces rising, this brings the Virgo new moon firmly into the house of partnerships, the 7th house. So this is going to bring your attention to all your partnerships, your marriage, if you have one, your business partnerships, and your one-on-one connections, just kind of in general as you move through life. So this is a time where you really want to just be thinking about who you are as a partner. What kind of partner do you want to be? Like, how can you show up and be of service yet not lose yourself in the partnership? Pisces rising, that's going to be a question. So there's something that can help ground you here. It's just going to be very clear about what those practical tasks are that can help your partner out. And again, it could be a business partner. So this might be you thinking about what task list do you need to take care of so your business partner doesn't have to. And then you can, have a better meeting where you're not hung up on the small stuff that you already took care of, right? So it's that kind of thinking. And if you feel confused, like, fine, it's going to be part of this, because with Pisces rising, you've got Neptune in that first house. You probably don't have a crystal clear idea of who you are, nor should you right at this moment. And that's really okay. But what you can be assured of is that if you're working towards the higher purpose of Virgo to be of service, that piece is going to fall into place. So that's what you want to be thinking about.
Yeah, I can just imagine this playing out with someone like feeling confused about if they are, giving themselves away too much, or being too overly adaptive to their partner. And maybe they're, I can see this nervousness that could occur. And at this, not that those are not sometimes things that are important to consider, but right now, you don't need to consider that. You just need to consider, what does the partnership need on a practical level? What is the thing? If it's showing up in your marriage or domestic or romantic relationship, well, romantic, that's different, but a domestic or a marriage partner, the detail might be, I don't know, honey, I'm going to drive the kids to soccer every night this week, or I'm going to do the dishes every night this week, or whatever, some practical thing that will help them. If it's a business partner, like you said, take something off the to-do list, and that is going to help clarify your position in the relationship over time. It might not today or tomorrow, but the task right now is simply to do something helpful that supports the partnership.
Yeah. Clear out the clutter.
Clear out the clutter.
Yeah. I think that makes sense, what you said. Like, yeah, it'd be very easy to be confused about that with Pisces rising. But also, Laura, I like how you really kind of focused in on not as much about the other person as it is about the relationship. What does the relationship need? Like, as a family unit, if you're like, ooh, it'd just be easier for me to, like what you said, Lori, drive the kids to soccer because you just know it's going to be easier for you and you know something's going on with the partner. Great. Awesome. You're not giving yourself away. You're being practical, and you're seeing, where the holes are and what needs to be, where you need to step up. And it's pretty simple. So
yeah, and how much that supports you in the long run, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Okay, so I think we covered everything there, and thank you, Jenny.
Thank you, Lori. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, everybody. We'll do this again soon. Take care. Bye.
All right. Bye.